to go.
Good to go.
Good to go.
Man, yeah, I want the sun to come out.
Good to
Sun.
Good to go. Good to go. Good to go. I don't want the sun to come out because I'm
Monster.
Yeah.
You're a monster.
I'm a creature of the night and of the darkness and all things around me. What are we talking about? What are we doing today? How we gonna play? Coffee in my veins.
Welcome back to Stay Indoors.
Woo! Hi!
As usual, I am Kelly. I'm going to be kind of running things here. With me is Brandon.
Hello.
And Sean.
Greetings.
So today, guys, I kind of wanted to continue what we did last week where we were talking more about some kind of abstract stuff about video games. We were talking about sequels and like sort of sequel philosophy last week.
Sequelitis?
We're still, I feel like, waiting on big news, and none of us have seen like a big movie or anything recently. So what I wanted to do this week was kind of talk about a different aspect. I want to talk about violence in video games.
Right.
Violence.
Okay.
A couple different angles that I wanted to kind of hit it from. One of them is, sort of the mistaken belief that like violence in video games has anything to do with like an increase in violent behavior.
Yeah.
But the other one was sort of how different video games approach violence and how it's connected mechanically and like where you get disconnects between the story and the narrative.
Yep. Cool.
So
I got some.
one I wanted to jump into first, obviously if you guys ever have like a particular one that comes up.
Yeah.
You already had the thing, Sean. What was it?
No.
What?
I was gonna say, was this brought on by any like news or anything that came out recently, or was this just
No, not in particular. We were having a discussion about it
We were, yes,
a little
that's
while
true.
ago, and it just kind of seemed like a good time for us to jump in on it because there wasn't anything major that super interests us to sort of talk about right now.
Cool. Yeah. I was talking about like just you mentioned the narrative dissonance of violence in video games.
I have a feeling I know where this is going.
Exactly, and I was gonna immediately talk about Nathan Drake in the Uncharted. He's like this good, nice, charismatic dude who murders so many people, so many, and it's like, wow, you're a bad dude.
And he murders them with like assassin like precision and like a cold, calculated like they are obstacles in my way.
Yeah, exactly.
And I need them gone.
And I guess you could say that's just like that's just the gunplay of fucking the game. And I'm like, but then you have a game about a treasure hunter, and he shoots so many people, so many to the point where I'm like, I don't remember Indiana Jones shooting nearly as many.
Yeah, like a similar character, Indiana Jones. He kills a couple people, but it's usually a survival thing, not so much like there's a horde of people and I gotta mow them all down.
Yeah, no, and it's great, and I love that, but like. Yeah, it's so ridiculous, the narrative dissonance in some games where they're like, we want to tell this very fun, upbeat story.
It's also like very personal in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
like, as you progress through those games.
Exactly, like in the first one, it's about Nathan doing Drake's fortune, right? And so it's
he's trying to like connect to like his ancestors and like discover his old heritage or whatever. Yeah,
and it's like, and that's fine, and like, and all that stuff's really cool. But I like would want to see more about the raiding of the tombs. And to bring it up again, I guess Tomb Raider also is the same way. I haven't played Tomb Raider.
The newer Tomb Raiders are worse.
Yeah.
The Tomb Raiders were like, you would go into a tomb and then you would run into another Tomb Raider who was working for like the opposing company that you were like trying to stop.
Yeah.
But you would run to one guy in like a separate room and then
and now you run into that one guy like in Uncharted. You run into that one guy and his army. Of people, and you're like trapped in this environment where there's like rocket launchers and like
and
automatic
rifles.
assault weapons.
I hated that in the first one where you just like you'd look around a corner and just like boom, and you get hit by an RPG. You're just like, what is happening?
Yeah, and I also think that it kind of breaks the.
It's one dude.
It kind of like breaks the feeling because like Indiana Jones always has that like slight sense of like you're kind of a superhero. Like nobody can do that, but he's also not like if he gets shot once, like that's gonna be a big deal.
Yeah,
right?
That's gonna be a narrative beat.
That's something that happens in the movie.
Yeah.
Whereas like with Nathan Drake, you're just like you pop your head around your chest high wall and you get hit with like a rocket launcher and then you just like auto health regenerate.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a weird.
Yeah.
Disconnect between like the character we see in the cutscenes and who that is versus who we kind of play in the game when he's because he never comes off as like a trigger happy crazy guy. Like he's just there to find his treasure and like do his thing.
That's his goal, and then everything else is just like fucking obstacles that need to be eliminated and removed permanently.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
Like, there's no non-lethal approach.
And
it's just die.
Yeah, there's no non-lethal approach, and that's one of the weird things about it is that like the gunplay is a central pillar of the Uncharted series,
which is a very strange thing.
Which is a very strange thing. And then you were talking about Tomb Raider, and that one has in the first new Tomb Raider, it was just called Tomb Raider. The first one, and then it was Rise of the Tomb Raider, and then I think the new one was like Shadow of the Tomb Raider. It was like a one that like was speculated but hasn't come out yet or something.
Oh, okay. I have no idea.
Anyway, the first one, like Tomb Raider. It's like a whole thing where when she first kills somebody, it's like this whole big moment.
Yeah,
she gets like assaulted and she like has a gun in her hand and she manages to fight the guy off and kill him and she's like shaking and it's like this whole thing. But then everybody after that, you just like are indiscriminately murdering.
Yeah, with a
like
bow
aggressively
and arrow.
with a bow and arrow, and you're like this tactical like hunter killer.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we go from never having killed to being an efficient machine at it. And it's the same way in Far Cry 3, where you're like, you know, you're a kid on vacation, and then all of a sudden you're fucking a machete cutting 12 people in a row, and it's fun, and I guess that's the point of video games is like it's
to be fun.
The violence is fun.
There was definitely like a weird era there where people were just putting in those mechanics just because like they were the popular thing at the time, and it's like, oh yeah, maybe you should be shooting people, but like it's fun, right?
Yeah,
having a good time.
I think if they made Nathan Drake now, I think it would be a little bit different if there wasn't already this like precedent of him using guns.
Oh, totally.
I think that Naughty Dog might have approached it a little differently, having played like let's say Last of Us came first, and then they did Uncharted. I feel like Uncharted would be a much calmer game, like Last of Us is. It would be much more personal.
I have more of an emphasis on the exploration
and probably more stealth.
I think there would be cool. Like there would be a lot of exciting environmental areas, like
traditional. Their set pieces have always been really cool in the Uncharted series for sure.
There'd be some great action moments where you're on the train and you're like climbing up, and it's like, holy shit, this is exciting. You know what I mean?
Things other than shooting people.
Yeah. And I think that action movie vibe would still be there, and there might be like a few gun moments. But it's just like it's a huge part of the game. Like you said, it's one of the main pillars.
Yeah, and it's just odd. But like you guys were saying, like it's fun, right? And that's one of the things that we were talking about, like the sort of conversation we were having that sparked having the discussion here, is like being violent is like we don't like to talk about it, but it's like a part of human nature.
Yeah,
like we're aggressive, we get angry, we want to like hit something or like whatever, right? That's like we're animals. That's what we do. It's part of what we are. But we've kind of all agreed that like doing it to each other is a bad thing. Like we shouldn't. We shouldn't do that.
I like to think that we're slowly evolving as a race to the point where we realize violence isn't as necessary. Not that we're obviously not all like that, but I feel like we're slowly getting in that direction.
Yeah. Well, this is a broad topic.
Yeah.
Like violence in humans.
Yeah.
It is. And like whether or not society actually represses it or removes it is, I think, a very interesting topic that philosophers you can debate about. I'm not one of you. Not yet. So anyway, welcome to my philosophy corner. This over here. But I think it's very interesting to like have these violent outlets of video games. But like not even all the video games we play are violent.
No, I know, but that's all the point I was gonna make was like it gives us a chance to like sort of explore that side and have that catharsis without actually hurting anybody.
Yeah.
That's real, right? Like I can remember having like when I was like in high school and whatever, I remember having a really bad day and I just wanted to like play a game where I could just like get headshots. I just wanted I wanted to hit something, but I didn't want to actually hurt anybody. And it's like that like primal like anger versus my like my human brain that's like that's not good. You can't just go punching people. And it gives me like that outlet, right? It's like people who do like martial arts or anything, any way to like physically work out that aggression. You kind of get that like emotional catharsis. And I think that's one of the reasons that it can be so fun.
Well, yeah.
Like there's obviously a savagery to it, like the fact that we want to do it and it's enjoyable. But it's also in a safe space.
It's very interesting because I remember my little brothers really wanted to play Gears of War when they were younger, and my stepdad at the time just didn't want them to didn't want the violence on. But there was a violent turn-off option on Gears of War. You could play without the blood, the gore, and the swearing. Which I thought was a very interesting thing to do. There's like a family-friendly Gears of War version where when you chainsawed someone in half, they didn't get cut in half. They just kind of fall limply. And it was kind of interesting. You're like, wow, I do the violent act, but nothing violent happens. Yeah. It was an interesting thing to watch. Both, I was like, I remember watching the game, and I'd be like, oh my goodness, it's so much less satisfying. My brothers didn't care. They just wanted to play the game. You know what I mean?
Engage with the mechanics.
I always found it very interesting because I always kind of figured, like, from my point of view, I've always kind of understood the violence thing from a game that's realistic, kind of like Gears of War, where like you shoot a guy, the head blows up, there's blood, and like, okay, that is violent. That realistic? I understand.
Yeah,
that,
realistic head explosions.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Like,
in terms of the body dismemberment, it's very over the top.
Yes, it is. No, I understand that. Yeah. But I mean, and then like a lot of military shooters and stuff like that, where it was like, they're real guns, real places, all this kind of stuff, right?
Bullet drag.
There was a trend from maybe say like 2005, maybe a little earlier, up until like a few years ago, that it was just the military shooter, and those were, as far as I was concerned, those were a lot of the games that parents were avoiding, trying to get kids to avoid. Mm-hmm. But I remember it being quite funny as a kid because I had a friend who, like, isn't it like No Violence Day or like Anti-Bullying Day or something like that? And I remember one of my friend's moms was like, hey, on that day, like, you're not allowed to play any violent video games because it's just like, you're avoiding it. And I'm like, okay.
That's kind of cool.
But the violent video games was like Crash Bash. And there was this like top-down, like cartoony Hercules like co-op game we played where you like ran around and like fought against like mythical creatures, but it was super cartoony. Like, we're talking like Cartoon Network, like ridiculous, like no blood or anything. Like, it was just like you cut the head off a Cyclops and the head just goes doom 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 and just like fumbles off or whatever, right? And she was like, yeah, no violent video games. And I was like, technically yes, but I was like, I'm not gonna feel violent playing this game. Like, I just, So I just found it very interesting as to like how certain people interpreted like a violent video game, and technically she's not wrong. Well, no, like in Crash Bash, you're like hitting each other and like pushing each other off cliffs and like that. Yeah. But it's like, I'm also a marsupial wearing jeans.
But it's like, would you consider like a Mario game violent because you jump on things?
No, right? That's exactly what it was, right? Yeah.
I mean, it's just the tool in which to solve the problem, and it's very interesting that like a lot of video games have some sort of violent niche. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like the punching and kicking are a part of solving the problem, and to a higher extent shooting and then stabbing as well.
I'm sorry, there's a little bug.
Fucking fly.
But Sean, I just like, I'm thinking so much about that thing you said about how like having the no violence mode in Gears of War.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's such a big, like, we can't spend all our time on it, but like that's like getting to me so much.
Yeah,
I'm like, that's a different game.
Well, yeah.
It's inherently like you're chainsawing somebody and then they're not falling in half. Like, it's
not
so
funny. I remember the chainsaw just kind of like goes through the person and like nothing happens. They just drop dead.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just like,
it's like total early Xbox stuff.
Yeah. I'm just like, that's so funny and so like, are you even playing the same game anymore? Like, at what point is it? No, I know, but like, at what point is it no longer even like what they want to make? Like, this is just blowing my mind.
I think it's an interesting thing to put in your game. It requires very little work, I think, very little programming. Well, actually, I would have no idea how much programming. That might be a lot, actually. But I think it's an interesting thing because you have all these kids. Like, how many times did you play Halo? We played Halo, and we were both under 17, which is the mature rating.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, cops. It's totally 18. I didn't play Halo until recently. But police are everywhere, so they'll put you to jail. That's why I never had alcohol until I was 19.
Why is that open? Why is it open?
Yeah,
getting a breeze.
Getting a good old.
There was no noise before.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's so disappointed in the noise. But basically, what was I saying?
Halo.
It's so funny that they have these options for people who are, kind of against the violence. They're like, oh, you can turn it off if your younger brother wants to play. Despite this being an M-rated game,
that's the thing. It's
like purchase without parents' approval.
It's an M-rated game, and in Gears of War, like the fact of the matter is you can run at people and chainsaw them in half. So it's like, oh, you can like hit a button and now they don't fall in half. Mm-hmm. But like that's not. That's just so weird to me.
I think it's also to a degree it's a sales strategy because then. You know, the one kid might be able to convince him. I'm like, yeah, you can like turn off all.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
And the swearing, it's a big one actually. The swearing.
That's what I mean, though. That's what's so strange. Is it's like it's clear. It's clearly for that. You know what I mean? Like it's clearly to be able to market it, like you said, to have like the younger people be able to play it, but they still have to be old enough to buy it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, to get the base game. Like I don't know.
It's very interesting.
That's just so crazy.
Something I was gonna say though, like I find it very because you're pointing out how. Violence seems to be a very common thing in video games. Like even if were you saying it?
Yeah.
Like how even though a video game isn't innately violent, like in Mario, like you stomp on things to like get rid of them.
There are enemies in your way, then you have to get rid of them.
But I also feel that like that it's definitely not a new thing. Like violence has been in like every type of media and art for as long as we've been around, right?
Yeah.
And I think I'm sure, I mean, again, I wasn't really around during the golden age of cinema, but I'm sure that there was also a thing where, like, you know, violent films are making people more violent.
What's that movie, Shame? I think it's a pretty violent movie, and it came out...
You mean, like, people were saying that it was making people more violent, you mean?
Yeah. But I mean, like, James Bond, one of the most loved movie series ever, and people, like... idolize it and think it's like so cool and that it's like but it's not even like a dirty violent, it's like a classy like he's like, a spy and kills bad guys. And so I just think totally. I think well the point I was just kind of say is that there's always been something, and so when I always see these articles being like video games are making our kids more violent and stuff like that, and it's like there are other things that will also make your kid violent if that's your argument.
If like
well that's the thing,
I think the person is innately
violent.
The
newest
thing,
I think
people are innately more or less violent themselves, and then things will trigger or cause them to be more violent if they're violent people to begin with.
Well, I think it's like there's a huge thing that we have as humans, and it's like that this suspension of disbelief, right? It's like I know when I'm playing a video game that it's not real. Mm-hmm. I immerse myself by trying to immerse myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? And in most games, when given an option of morality, of good or bad, I choose the let's not kill anybody. For instance, I just played Dishonored, and I played the entire thing trying to minimize as much violence as I could. Obviously, there's dead people on the way, but that's not my fault. It's mostly because of the rat play.
So that's an interesting thing too, is those games that give you that option, right? Where like it's still violent because like you're still gonna like hit them with sleep darts or choke them out and like hide their bodies so nobody else finds them or whatever.
Exactly.
But it's like degrees of violence. It's degrees of severity. Like in one version of it, like they're gonna get up later and walk away and be fine.
Yeah, and that's just for you to like know like you didn't do too bad.
Well, it's like the Batman games. Mm-hmm. Like you can like aggressively brutalize these people.
With punches.
But you can turn on your detective vision. It just lets you know, like, they've still got a heartbeat. They're just unconscious. You, like, run them over with your Batmobile, and they, like, went out of their way. They have, like, the thing that zaps them. So they just get, like, knocked away before they actually get hit. And it's like, no, it's okay. They're fine. You can look at them.
Which I thought was so funny when that mechanic was there. I was like, sure.
You know what?
You saved yourself that time, Batman.
You know what would have been more interesting is, like, an auto rubber bullet shooter. It just, like... You know what I mean? You had to, like, click... Because you didn't want to kill anybody, so you'd be like, oh, yeah.
But that's also like an interesting question too when it comes to the violence of stuff, because we're seeing it with the new Insomniac Spider-Man game. They've talked about there's like these animations that play and stuff. If you're like fighting guys on a rooftop and like your kick would send them flying, we saw it in the demo. There's like these animations that play out, so like you can't just chuck people off buildings. You can't just kill people. And you can chuck people off buildings, but you will then save them. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, you can't just, like, let them fall to their deaths.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's a narrative dissonance thing with the violence of Spider-Man.
Yeah, because like, Spider-Man is somebody who doesn't kill somebody, and, like, you as the player might be like, I don't care, it's a video game, I'm going to throw people off roofs. But the developers are like, well, no, this character doesn't do that. You're playing as his character, so you can't do that.
It's pretty interesting, and I like it.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a carryover from what we've seen in the Batman games, right? Where, like, because clearly, like, the Batman games are influencing superhero games now.
Yeah,
and I just
they
think it's
did really
cool
well.
to see because they're good games, and I think it's cool to see that sort of evolution of, because in Batman they just put up invisible walls on rooftops.
Yeah.
If you're fighting enemies on roofs and you like hit them, they just kind of stop. And like it's fine. Like it prevents you from like, you just assume Batman is good enough to like not knock people off.
Yeah.
And then like the Spider-Man version instead is like he knocks them off but he saves them.
Yeah.
Right? And it's that it has to take away a little bit of control from the player in order to maintain the illusion, because you're playing a specific character as opposed to like an RPG where you're like sort of making the character.
Exactly.
And you're making those decisions yourself. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, but just to get those kind of mechanics, I think are really, really cool, and they maintain an integrity of a character.
When you're playing a specific character, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It would be awkward if it was like Nathan Drake, and then you go out of an elaborate way to see Nathan Drake loading rubber bullets into every gun. You know what I mean? Like, it'd be ridiculous. But but Nathan Drake kills people because that's like within the narrative.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say?
I don't know. You didn't say it yet.
I know.
I was going to point out that I think we definitely also had, and I said it earlier, there was a trend of like,
Yeah.
especially gun violent video games.
Oh yeah.
Again, from like, because like early video games, like for one, they didn't even look that real. And we're talking like 8-bit, 16-bit, and like
Yeah, like
really awful 3D
Contra.
graphics. Or like even if you were playing a shooter game, it was like, is that a gun? Like the closest we got was like GoldenEye.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay.
I mean, that's a gun.
And then when the graphics got good enough, there was like this crazy trend, like basic Call of Duty probably would have been the start of that, or somewhere around there, or SOCOM games, the PS2, where it was like military shooters where you play as military or whatever. And to be fair, I actually was never really interested in those myself. But I think we're seeing that trend now die off, because I think people again are now realizing that video games are fun for other reasons too, rather than just shooting things.
It's a fatigue thing, I think, also. But like, I think the people who bought games, like who got really into Call of Duty, they didn't really play other video games. Like I
agree.
I used to talk to this guy I used to work with, and I'd be like, oh yeah, he's like, oh, I'm playing my Xbox. I'm like, oh yeah, what are you playing right now? And he goes, oh, Call of Duty, always Call of Duty. And I was like,
yeah,
cool, you're that kind of gamer, and there's
So,
nothing wrong with
yeah.
that. That's that's your kind of game, right? I just I enjoy video games for more than just
Like I
shooting
know
people.
of like the majority of people who I know who play Call of Duty play like exclusively Call of Duty.
Yeah.
And there's a
it's
couple
Outbreak.
games they try, and they're like, oh, those are kind of fun, but like,
And usually
they
they're
always end with
shooters.
that. Yeah.
In some
The shooters is
capacity,
some
yeah.
kind of action game,
Yeah.
yeah. But I was gonna say, like, to play on that whole like violence seems to be something in video games in general. I think it's just because it's a very action type of art. Like it's just like it's like there are story-based games, and those are not a popular style of game for most gamers. Like those like very
But
like
even
Telltale
those-
style games, even those have some
Well,
violence.
sure,
And, yeah.
they're
Niche
violence,
markets,
right?
yeah.
No,
And
but they're like a very specific market for a type of video game. When the majority of video games, there's more movement in them, and you need more things to do, and there's only so much you do by not being violent or not interacting with your environment
Well,
in
like,
some way.
and like, you want antagonists, right? Because that creates, narratively, it creates the feeling of like it creates a satisfying arc when you overcome like the ultimate antagonist in the course of the game.
Yeah.
But also like moment to moment overcoming individuals as obstacles. It creates that reward sense as a player that makes you feel good because you did a thing.
Yeah.
And it does that through human or humanoid like antagonists that you can overcome. And if it's like an action game, like if it's a dialogue heavy game, you can like outwit your opponent or like solve the mystery and like put them behind bars or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But if it's an action game, like
It's usually
What-
besting them in combat.
you're besting them in combat. Like what else can you do if you're jumping over buildings and like
Yeah.
doing all this stuff? You're not gonna like stop to engage them in a clever conversation, which would be really funny. But
Yeah.
It'd be
like,
great if that
it's-
was the last boss fight of like a first-person shooter. It's just like dialogue,
Out of
like
chocolate.
1, 2. When do I get to shoot?
That like Call of Duty bro is like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like they're sitting there like hitting dialogue options,
But
and the game ends, and they're like, fuck this.
But that's also what I really enjoyed about like Dishonored is like, just like I can't say it.
Nope, sorry, babe.
Flip.
Keep it yourself.
Anyway, so Dishonored's
But
great.
anyways, I think I like. There's obviously story and dialogue based sections in that game.
Yeah.
And for being a very first person action style game, I'm sure it's cool contrast.
Well, yeah, no. What I just love is like it totally depends on how you played the game so far.
Yeah. Yeah,
but like, and that's really cool. That's how you think a
characters are
really
later.
developed game that caters to how you play.
Another game series I want to talk about. We've been talking about it a lot, but it's just because it's so prevalent and there's been so many of them and they've done
Assassin's Creed.
so much. Is Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Because I think that's another series that does a little bit of the narrative dissonance with its violence. You're playing as an assassin. The violence is obviously very important, and there's going to be a lot of people trying to stop you from accomplishing your goals. But it's a weird game because, unlike Uncharted, which narratively kind of avoids death, and then it's like almost exclusively in the gameplay.
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed, the deaths that occur narratively are very important. That's like the whole focus, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to take out these people to like secure your objectives.
Yeah.
But anybody who dies along the way, like, it doesn't matter. Like, they have this like incredible reverence for life. So like when they kill somebody, they spend their last minutes with them and speak to them and stuff.
Yeah.
Close their eyes, like do whatever, do like a little ritual, keep some of their blood,
mad.
like do their whole.
Yeah.
They have a whole thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like weirdly very respectful. They're like, I had to kill you for the good of the world, but like I'm gonna be here with you as you're dying.
Yeah.
But everybody else is like, I'm kicking you off fucking buildings and I'm stabbing you and I'm shooting you off my carriage and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm poisoning you with a berserker dart that'll cause you to kill your allies
Yeah.
and then cause you to suffer a slow, agonizing death.
I really liked the first few games because there was I felt like there was a lot more penalizing for killing the wrong person, which I thought was very cool because it was like, yeah, the assassins don't want to kill the wrong people. They want to kill the person they're going after for whatever the reason is that they want to do that.
Yeah.
But I feel like, yeah, and especially the new ones, just like shoot this guy, stab this guy. Like in Syndicate, like the blighters are everywhere, and you like the game basically goes like kill the blighters.
Yeah. Well, and you get a gang, you get the Rooks, and they'll like if they just happen to be in the together at the wrong time, like if they're just generated in the same city block, they'll just start fighting.
Yeah.
And you're in the middle of it, and you're like, well, like they're
Because it's all on London and they're fighting.
I got my Rooks, like I guess I'm involved in this
Yeah.
fight too now, and like if you're getting chased by blighters and the Rooks see you, they're like, oh fuck that, and they get in and they start doing it, and it's just like a fucking gong show. But then it's like you kill the one person and you're like, yes, your death has meaning.
Yeah.
You sought the wrong thing for this world.
I think something else to point out too, though, is that a lot of these characters, especially from an outside point of view, there are things that are innately cool about an assassin and like the aesthetic and the idea of assassin, besides the act of killing people. Like it's the whole like
Infiltration.
infiltration and sneaking and like the gear that they use and what they wear and all the secrets that they know and don't know and all this kind of stuff. Like the whole world of it. Like the killing of it is such a small part of like what makes an assassin cool to me. That's just my perspective, and I think that goes for a lot of other characters in video games, where it's just like killing is such a minor part of it, but it kind of has to be there in order for the character to work.
Yeah.
But it's such a small part of like what makes this interesting and cool.
Well, it's why I enjoy games like D&D, and I would really like to play an assassin who's got a high... Like, I want to play an assassin rogue bard. For that very reason, I want to be the one who's like
cool.
pretends to be the noble to get close to poison the person, not so he can like sneak in through the window and stab them, but like if that's what that character has to do, that's what they'll do.
It would be neat if like an Assassin's Creed game, your objective was to like only kill your target more often, right? Like if it had more of that stealth element and more of that ability to blend in with crowds and like sort of work your way towards the target, and like only, and I feel like that was very prevalent in the older ones as well. Like in the first game, like the sort of more story based like actual missions when you're killing your target is like you need to get to them without getting spotted, and then you can get out of there. Yeah. But like nobody's should know you're there or anything.
I love that about the first one.
Yeah, like it wasn't implemented as well as it could have been, but the idea there was you only kill the person you're supposed to kill. And then you get away and they never find you.
Well, like in Assassin's Creed Chronicles, I'm playing the China one right now. It has like this 3-tier point rewarding system when you beat a level, and it's like the first one is called Shadow, the second one's called Assassin, and the last one's called Brawler, and they're pretty much implied. Shadow means you go past without getting detected, not killing anyone. Assassin is not getting detected but killing some people, and Brawler is just like being violent and just fighting everybody. But getting a gold level on each one of those things, they're tiered, so like you get less points for getting a gold brawler, but you get a lot of points for being a gold shadow.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really cool how the game is just like, yeah, don't kill anybody, don't get detected, you're gonna get max points. Good job, well done. And I think that's a really cool
that is
part
really cool.
of that game.
Yeah.
That I think the main series is kind of lost track of.
It's very interesting because I would categorize Assassin's Creed Chronicles and Assassin's Creed as very different games. Assassin's Creed Chronicles is a
100%.
stealth game.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And then you get Assassin's Creed, which is an action game.
Mm-hmm.
They're very different.
Yeah.
Right? Just how they interact with being detected.
Yeah.
Like, I think Syndicate is slowly moving more towards a stealth game with combat elements.
Yeah, in Assassin's Creed Syndicate, you have your brawler twin, and you got your sneaky assassin girl twin.
Yeah.
And it really, it points out the two different cool mechanics of Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, but it's something that I think Assassin's Creed has ignored for so long.
I agree.
Is
yes.
the infiltration sneaking, really.
Yeah.
Like Assassin's Creed 3, I don't remember that being a stealth game really at all. I remember using rope darts.
Remember hunting animals.
And
Trying to be
lot of hunting
sneaky,
animals.
trying to be sneaky to catch up to a bear.
and
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed 4 was about pirates.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Sequels.
I
Watch our last podcast.
But like a lot of stealth games reward the not being seen, like Splinter Cell and Dishonored and Thief, and like all these games are about like being undetected and doing your job as efficiently and as unnoticeable as possible.
Well, I think a lot of the characters in these games too is because they're morally sound people, and like they don't want to kill people as characters.
Yeah.
They're like, we want to just get in, get the job done, and get out. But the game gives you options to do other things because they want to make it as sandboxy as possible for you to do what you want.
And that's like a weird thing. Is that always even the best idea? Like, does that lead to the best gameplay? Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like you can do everything kind of well. I'd rather be able to do one or two things like really well, like mechanically that are more sound. Right?
No, totally. Yeah. I agree.
Just back on the violence thing, I remember when I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to play Dead Rising because it was deemed too violent by my mother. And I was like, I remember thinking, and I won her over with this argument. I'm like, well, they're not people, they're zombies. And she was like still uncomfortable with it, but inevitably I played it, and I didn't even enjoy it that much. I remember being like, yeah, this is dumb. I'm just like mowing through mindless zombies.
There's no like point to it.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, I was never really restricted to violent video games. I did mention to you guys before that like my dad had Quake when I was really young, and there was like a small period my dad was kind of like, maybe I shouldn't let you have it. By the time I was like 10 or whatever, I was playing Quake.
Yeah.
But I remember the one game my mom was always kind of like about, like she never told me not to play it, but she was always very uncomfortable when I had someone over and we were playing it, and she kind of was like, okay, you've been playing for like an hour, maybe you should get off or whatever, was Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
The first one we played was Grand Theft Auto 3, I think, which is still one of the top-down like arcade style ones. And that one,
San Andreas was Grand Theft Auto 3, right? Because they didn't put a number
for the
on
PlayStation.
It 4,
and that one, like, it was so like it's so contrast, like the colors are so bright and so ridiculous. But the thing was is that you would go on top of a building and like throw a Molotov cocktail, and it would like kill people on the street, and then the people on the street would also be like, fuck you, fuckhead, like, they'd be swearing at you from down below. And even me as a kid, I was like, this is a lot, this is what the fuck, right? And so, and then later down the line, like when San Andreas came out and stuff like that, I remember I had a buddy come over and play it with me. My mom was like, okay, like, don't play this game like too long, like, because you play a thug, like you play just like a violent guy in the city, and that's like all it is really. Like, it's just like you're in a real city being violent. And so I kind of
Well,
but again, I always had a
violence,
disconnect, right?
It feels like violence for violence's sake, kind of, and like it's so self-aggrandizing. Like when you play a game like Assassin's Creed, even, or like something like a Batman or whatever. Like, I'm clearly not opposed to violent games. Like, I play a lot of action games, and we're saying, they're all violent just by their very nature.
Yeah.
But like, ultimately, there's a point to it. Like, you feel like you have a goal, and generally it's at least somewhat noble, or at least like from your perspective it's noble, right? From the characters, and that's interesting. Whereas something like Grand Theft Auto, you're like playing it and you're like, I'm like the bad guy in any other game. Like like if I was playing Batman game, like I'd be trying to stop me, you know what I mean? Like,
that's true,
because you're just out there and you can just like find a random person and just kill them and take their shit just because you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, Okay.
It was like, I remember when I first was introduced to 3D Grand Theft Auto, like San Andreas. It wasn't fun for very long. It was like fun. I'd like go up to some random person's street and just like punch them. You're like, that's funny. And after a while, you'd be like, why am I doing this? This is awful.
Yeah.
And then I'd go and like get cool cars and do like cool things like jump out of planes and do things that like are so crazy that it's not necessarily violent or anything
they're
like that.
ridiculous.
Yeah. And I think Grand Theft Auto as a series is we're very aware of that because I think they went the very much more comedic / sandbox route now.
Well,
Because Grand Theft Auto 5, Grand Theft Auto 5 is insane. It's not really looked at as a violent like criminal style video game. It's looked at as a sandboxy, weird mini game, whatever you want game.
Yeah, I didn't play a lot of the early Grand Theft Autos because there was all this stigma, and I also just wasn't interested in it. Like Grand Theft Auto
That's kind of like me too, yeah.
4, or not Grand Theft Auto 4, the San Andreas and Vice City. I just didn't play because I didn't have a PlayStation, and I also just wasn't interested in playing them. And then I remember playing Grand Theft Auto 4 and being told like, oh, it's like whatever you've heard about Grand Theft Auto, it's just a really good story. And I remember playing it, and it was actually like pretty decent. Like you played as Nico Bellic, and he was just like, oh my cousin Nico.
And which one's that?
Grand Theft Auto 4, Liberty City. You were in New York.
Right, yes.
And it was just like you were this like Eastern European like I can't remember where you're from, but you're from like a Slavic country, and you come over
Turkey or something.
I don't think so.
No.
I think it was like I don't think it's ever stated.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember. Anyway, if it's
just
stated, let us
cousin.
know. Junior cousin, and you come over and you just try and make it a name for yourself, and it happens that you just like you drive a taxi cab for a while. And I remember this being like a really weird thing, and because you drive a taxi cab, you like meet people who give you jobs, and like some of those jobs are like get increasingly worse and worse.
Yeah.
And then your severity of crime starts to increase, and you're really just like looking for one person. Like Nico has a mission in the city, like he's here for a reason. And it's very interesting, and it's kind of like you get indebted and you start doing favors for people. And I didn't feel like that was as fun as Grand Theft Auto 5, which is about like the idea of robbing banks and stuff. Like it didn't get there quick enough.
Yeah, there was a game series for the PlayStation and PlayStation 2 that my dad and I really like called Driver, and it was kind of like the smash up between Grand Theft Auto and like a James Bond. You played as kind of like an undercover cop. That you had like a hideaway house, and you had like people you could get equipment from when you needed like guns and ammo or cars or things like that. But I enjoyed that game way more because I was like, I want to get a cool car and like go do my mission where I have to like infiltrate this house and find this guy who's like selling drugs or whatever. And I found that like a million times more interesting than Grand Theft Auto because there was like purpose.
Yeah.
And I also was doing something like I was being the good guy, right? Like I was going in and like stopping drugs from being dealt or stopping other violence from happening, things like that. But you were still that guy. Like if I wanted to, that game had the mechanics in it that I could just go like shooting people in the streets, and it was like there. But I didn't do that. Yeah.
Fair enough.
I think my point there that I didn't realize I was going to was that people are violent. So like you play those games, and if the person is violent, they will go and shoot people in the street. But if not, you play like how you're supposed to play or whatever.
Yeah.
I was the lame guy who used to take a car and like drive in traffic. Like I'd actually follow the rules of the road.
I mean, I wouldn't stop for red lights.
I would. I couldn't in early games because in early games traffic lights were just random. They didn't have any kind of
pattern.
But later, like the PlayStation 2 versions, it was like no, there was actually a traffic pattern. Like green lights go. I was like yeah.
That's kind of funny. Yeah. No. I don't remember.
Fucking nerd.
I don't remember obeying traffic lights. And in Grand Theft Auto 4, I was just like, all right, let's just turn right and go left, and then yep.
Yeah, no.
I just wanted to ride a bike.
Obey traffic lights and games like that.
I rode a motorbike everywhere in that game, and I think that's what Grand Theft Auto was for me. It's a motorbike simulator, where I also play as a bank thief.
Sweet.
We talked about Grand Theft Auto a lot.
Yeah, we did.
Another game that I think is a good one to talk about is Doom.
I love Doom
because when we're talking about violence,
it's
Doom.
It's an OG too.
Well, yeah, you know what? It's like it's very funny that we talk about violence in video games, but violence in video games have kind of always been around each other. Like, think about the first games you had. We had Pong, right? And then we had Tetris, I guess. And then like moving on, we had like the modern video game birth, I guess, is like Mario and then
Zelda,
Pac-Man, and Doom, because Doom was made in like the late 80s, early 90s, I think.
yeah.
Somewhere around there, and it
Still
was
a lot before that though. A lot of Nintendo stuff before that.
yeah, like early 80s, late 80s kind of thing. That's like when the modern home console was kind of born.
Yeah.
Was around the like late 80s.
First release 93.
93, yeah, early 90s. But yeah, so video games have been around for like less than a decade, really. Like as the average consumer was like buying or purchasing them for kids, right? Mm-hmm. Doom was like around for less than a decade, and Doom is pretty violent. You're shooting undead things on Mars, you know. I mean, and it is dope.
Yeah.
It was so good. I remember having a blast. And then Quake came out.
Yeah.
You know, and then you had games like Half-Life in 96, 97. 4 years after Doom, you had like a 3D polygon game, Half-Life, about an alien invasion, and where you used a bunch of guns and you were a scientist and you just shot everybody, and it was ridiculous, and I loved it. It's awesome. It was a great game. But speaking to Doom's violence, it's always been there, and it's always been a part of the game. And then now you have the new Doom by Bethesda, and it's super violent.
I think it was published by Bethesda, but still developed by id.
Yeah, you're right. It was published by Bethesda.
But yeah, the thing is, it just leans into its violence. It's like that's what this game is. Yep. There's nothing else. Like you're here to blow up demons.
Yep.
From hell. And then that's another thing you were talking about, you were talking about, like, Mom, they're not humans, it's fine. And it's like, they're demons, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Kill demons? Of course, that's just a good thing to do. Demons, blow them up.
If demons showed up on Earth, I'd probably beat the crap out of them.
Well,
or run.
Probably run and
probably
then find a good super shotgun and then go to town.
Yeah.
But that's just it, right? Like, that's another big thing in video games is that there's violence, but we also get to explore like combat with non-human enemies.
Yeah, how much can you actually connect it to real life, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm never gonna have a giant laser plasma cannon and fighting demons.
No one's ever gonna make the BFG.
Never say ever.
Never say ever.
Never say ever.
That's just not a thing that's ever gonna happen. So I can just do that, and that's fun.
Yep.
That's cool. I'm never gonna do that. Like something like Dark Souls, I'm never gonna fight a fucking 20-foot tall skeleton man armed with nothing but a sword and a loincloth. That's never gonna fucking happen.
Yeah.
I can just do that.
Well, I think the other thing I was gonna point out earlier is that no matter what the form of content or media is, there's always gonna be those people who search for the more violent and gory style games. And I mean, that's like movies. Like, look at all the horror movies and violent movies we have. Yeah. And movies that are just like Doom, that are just, they're there almost purely to watch guy go around beating the shit out of people.
Yep.
And that's exactly how it is. I never understood the horror movie craze, but like that's another big thing. Like people who love, and there's two types of horror movies. There are like the horror movies that scare people, but then there's also like the gory style horror movies.
Well, they're also aptly named torture porn.
Yeah, there you go. Game movies where you see people get their organs ripped out and stuff like that. And I like, to a degree, I understand the kind of like, like let me see that again, kind of a thing.
Like the train wreck of it.
You're like I'm disgusted.
But I think that's almost because of my lack of exposure to it. I think because when I see that kind of movie, I'm like, oh, what the but I don't go searching for those things, right? But there'll always be those people who also want those type of video games and want to listen to that type of music and listen and paint those kind of pictures, right? Or take those kind of photos.
Like, violence is just a part of us, right? Yeah. So it's a part of our art.
Yeah.
Well, taste in anything.
Right, and it's about that moderation, right? Like it's very funny that I'm as likely to play Doom as I am to play Bound, a game about like a dancer who traverses a world made of weird geometry.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Bound, yeah.
So it,
I saw the trailers for that ages ago. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's like those games I think are both very good, and I would play both of them. Like, and it's just so funny that there's that weird duality, I think, in all of us. Is like, as likely as I am to play Gears of War and chainsaw someone in half, I'll play Journey, where I'm a little nice pilgrim going on a nice journey. You know what I mean? Like,
I think there is something to say about, like, if you are very aware that your kid is violent, maybe they shouldn't be playing video games. But on the other side of that, it could also be a very good outlet for them.
Well, yeah.
Right?
I just think it's funny, like, culturally we have no problem with, like MMA. Like, let's all go watch people trapped in a ring beat each other senseless and, like, knock teeth out and become bloody for money and fame.
Yeah.
But, like, heaven forbid our kids, like, play a game where you punch somebody once.
There are, like, some parents who I've met where it's like they're on top of all of it. Like, it's like, don't watch MMA, don't watch hockey or something like that, or, like, don't play video games. But then there are other parents where they're like, yeah, don't play that game. Who wants to watch Canuck game tonight and watch people beat the shit out of each other on the ice and blood on the ice rink?
And they're like, if there isn't a fight, it wasn't a real hockey game.
Yeah. Oh, I hated that. I hated that mentality when I used to watch hockey. It was awful.
Like, again, no stranger to violent video games, but I have no interest or patience for MMA. Like, just explaining my own standpoint and sort of talking about it, I'm like, does not interest me at all.
It interests me from, like, a technical and, like, visual standpoint, but, like, the violence innately doesn't interest me. Like, it's like get him, Sean. Like,
get him.
That doesn't interest me. It's just like, I want to see what cool moves these guys can pull off.
The skill.
And, like, that's all.
The skill is what interests me, and the mechanical, like, motion of how you tackle an opponent with a much, like, longer reach than you and a heavier weight, or like, is known to do this, like, to put the moves on the floor and then take the combat there where you know you're not as good as him.
Yeah.
Right? And
it's
like,
a skill thing.
Yeah, the whole problem solving aspect of, like, oh, that's interesting. Interests me. I don't watch it.
Well, that's where it comes into, like, that video game thing, right? Of your, like, that skill challenge of, like, it's fun to beat them because it's fun to pit my skills against this, like, AI opponent.
Yeah.
Or whatever, or, like, online player who is, like, knows what they're doing as well and see who can execute better.
Yeah.
That was a pun. Execute.
Yep.
But I
and then again, I'd watch a fight if it was, like, two people who are sparring and the intention is not to, like, bodily injure the other,
but put him into submission or something.
to get
like
him in
that.
submission or whatever, right? Like, get a couple of, like, body blows in that aren't, like, gonna do lasting damage.
MMA is definitely a unique thing where it's just, like, beat the shit out of each other, and it's all mixture of different martial arts and fighting styles, right? I was gonna say,
That's
but just like any kind of, like, thrill-seeking thing, whether you're somebody who like spars in boxing or some kind of martial arts, or you're someone who likes to go bungee jumping, there is a risk involved in doing that. If you go bungee jumping, you could hit something, or the cord could snap, and very bad things could happen. And vice versa with sparring, like, you could get hit real good in the head and get a concussion or whatever, right? I think that's just something. I think a lot of people who are very thrill-seeking, and violence is just a very action-oriented thing, and it's fun to watch and it's fun to partake in. But again, it's not the violence itself that is the intriguing part about it.
Yeah, it's that competition level.
Yeah, for sure.
I was wondering if there's any other games that you guys think are worthy to talk about. We touched on a couple. We kind of briefly touched on Mario. I think Zelda is an interesting one, just because it kind of, just in general, kind of bridges that weird gap between the cartoony and the realistic. Because you're, like, in this fantasy setting and you've got a sword and a bow and whatever, but it's still very, like, cartoony and flashy, and there's no blood and stuff, and they turn into smoke. And it's, again, it's just an example of that's the competition, right? It's the, like, can you get past this enemy?
Yeah.
Okay, you did it. There's, like, these things that are trying to stop you, and again, they're monsters. They're not human.
Yeah.
I think
Doom.
I think it's just some people don't realize how much of a disconnect there is from playing a video game and actually doing it, right? There was something else I was going to say about that.
Is it, like, the thing about how, like, people are concerned that, like, it teaches you how to use guns and stuff like that?
Yeah, like,
I don't think I know how to operate a gun.
I think more
idea how to use a firearm.
like, I think the reason why video games, more than, like, movies, for instance, it's been a bigger deal is because video games, it's an interactive form of art, right? So you are doing the shooting or whatever.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point.
So, like, I kind of, like, so when I see all this uproar and stuff like that, like, I get it. I'm like, yeah, I would, if I was from the previous generation where video games were like this, and then my kid was playing this, I'd also be kind of like, this is interesting. What is this about? But then at that point, I'd probably, like, I'd play it, and then I'd go, cool, okay,
it's nothing.
never mind, right? I think the a level, or one thing I should probably bring up is that one level in Call of Duty Modern Warfare that was controversial, and in my opinion, I think that's too much. I think that was a little much. Where you
could
are
skip it.
You can skip it, which I thought was
They put that disclaimer.
yeah,
at the
they
beginning
had
of the
to
game.
come up with a warning. I mean, like you can skip this level, but isn't the plot device is that you are trying to act as one of these terrorists in order to infiltrate them, and then but then you have to go in this mission where you shoot an airport.
Holy crap! Because I played that game and I did not know it was coming. So when I got to this thing and we were like gearing up, I'm like, oh, this is kind of an interesting mission. Like, I wonder what's going on. And the elevator doors open to a crowd of civilians, and I'm like, oh.
I felt really.
I went through the whole thing without shooting anybody.
I felt really uncomfortable. I think I did get to a point where I just I was able to just kind of like, nope, this is a video game, and then I just kind of like had fun with it, and just it didn't bother me at all. And I was like, yeah, but there was like this part in something where I'm like, why'd you have to do that level? Like I was kind of like, it's weird.
Yeah, you could have just talked about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't very like important for the narrative.
Well, like the end of that level, you get found out as the spy anyway, right?
Yeah,
And he kills you.
So yeah, it's like,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it kind of doesn't make any sense. Like, it's an interesting
it's supposed to be
level.
Like an awe factor, like holy shit.
Well,
Like,
I feel like it could have been. Do you know when that came out in relation to Spec Ops: The Line?
Oh, Spec Ops: The Line was so good. It came out because Spec Ops: The Line came out in 2011, I think.
Modern Warfare would have come out in like 2010.
Okay, so it's before then. Because like it's weird because COD's actually one I wanted to touch on briefly, just because I feel like there's a lot of like aggrandizement of
something in the spotlight.
Of combat and of like it like re-glorifies like these actual tragedies in human history and makes you like, look how fun it is to go through World War II with your gun and murder people, and it's like that was not a fun time for anybody.
Yeah.
And we turn it in and that's where it feels weird for me, because it's not just like it's not the abstract concept of violence anymore.
Yeah.
It's like it's a literal violent event that took place that was traumatizing and horrifying.
Yeah.
And we keep wanting to revisit it in like this like superficial way.
That's almost like all Call of Duty games. Like they're all kind of set, like the first couple are set, like Modern Warfare, are set in the Middle East and like other parts of the world. And it's like, it's kind of like, okay, we're glorifying this war too. Like,
yeah, no, I've always felt really uncomfortable with it. But the thing is, like, that mission could have been like an attempt to comment on that.
Yeah.
To comment on our current love affair with like the modern military shooter, but it rang hollow because it was in a Call of Duty game that was going to go on to have like that multiplayer anyway and have you do that anyway.
Yeah. It's not like much of an artistic statement if you then also continue to like glorify the war after.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like the first several Call of Duties, I played the first. Is it the first three that are all historic World War II ones? Yeah, it's the first three, and then World of War, which is the fifth one.
And now the newest one.
And now the newest one, which I probably won't play. But I like those original ones. Like I had a lot of fun doing them, and I think they do a good job like showing you these historic moments that happened in World War II. But I again, like I have a disconnect from me playing and shooting a gun as opposed to the environment I'm in. Like I have a disconnect there. I'm like, this is really cool. Like I'm on Normandy Beach kind of thing, and you're like, this is really cool. And then you're like, okay, now I'm gonna shoot some guys. And you kind of separate those two moments.
Yeah.
When I think something weird about Modern Warfare is that was a war that was currently happening, and so the events that happen in those games are fictional, which almost are kind of worse. Like it's kind of like now you're going out your way to glorify what's happening. Yeah, to fantasize what's happening in the Middle East when there are people currently right now in the Middle East fighting that war and dying.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of weird. And that's like, I never, like, as soon as Call of Duty went to Modern Warfare, I bought it because it was the trendy thing. I played it. I think I beat the campaign because the campaign was quite fun. And you were like, you went all over the world. It wasn't innately just Middle East. You like went to Russia and all this kind of stuff. And then after that, I was like, I don't care for this culture. And that was the only game I've ever traded in.
Yeah, it wasn't good. But it's so funny. I think I can't remember what stand-up comic talks about Modern Warfare, and they're talking about how realistic this game is. Like the shoelaces, they bounce in this thing, but the language is wrong. Like they got the language wrong for whatever country they were trying to emulate. So it's like it's like they don't speak that there. Yeah, because it was like it's a fictional city, I think, but it's a real country.
Yeah.
Anyway, they got it completely wrong.
It's a guy who's from like the comedian's from that country.
I don't think so.
Because he was saying we don't speak that. Like he was like,
oh, is that? I don't know.
At least that's what I remember from seeing this sketch, because I think I saw the same thing. And he was like, we don't like they don't speak Persian there, they speak this or like whatever,
yeah,
right?
or like I'm not too sure what it was, but yeah, it was like, wow, yeah, fuck, just fact check.
Yeah, he was basically saying how
How do you
how
miss it?
racist it was because it was just they were mixing up all those Middle Eastern races and it was bad.
Yeah, it's like a very diverse place.
Which I think just leads to another problem about just
Make
culture in general right now.
No, yeah.
Sucks.
We're just so ignorant over here sometimes.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
But that's a discussion for not this channel.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that, did you guys have anything that you wanted to final note on? Anything that was, like, burning, like, when I was, like, I needed to talk about that Gears of War thing? It's just, I couldn't let it go.
Yeah, no, I think it's cool that the gaming industry is noticing that we don't need, and I think it's not just the violence. I think we also talked about, like, not in this discussion, but we've also talked about how, like, there are other things to do in a game other than just competitive first-person shooting.
Yeah.
Like, so I think the gaming industry is doing this turn where it's like, we're telling cool stories now and, like, starting new gameplay mechanics and trying to promote indie titles where they're, like, trying new things and stuff like that. I think that's really cool.
I think it's a very, very interesting thing. I think violence is always going to kind of coexist in video games just because it's got such strong roots, and there's so many things you can do. Like, if you think about violence, there's so many iterations of violence that they've done. You know what I mean? And, like...
Yeah, it's a very broad concept.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's cool. Video games are good. I don't think they've made me a more violent person having played them for my entire life.
I'm like a freaking pacifist, and I've been playing video games forever.
Yeah.
Like,
I think we're all in that boat where I think the three of us are definitely not violent people, but we've been playing video games since we were wee babies.
wee lads.
Wee lads.
Like, I grew up with Mortal Kombat. If that didn't make me violent, video games don't make people more violent, you know what I mean?
That's another thing. Like, a lot of those games that I think parents and people worry about the most as being super violent are the ones that are so over the top. It's like...
They're, like, stupid.
Yeah, it's
Like,
not
it's like-
Kombat is
like
dumb.
the realistic explosions in Gears of War.
Realism in Gears of War, guys.
But no, and then, like, the pulling out of the spine in Mortal Kombat. Like, it's just
also,
so
like, in
over
Mortal
the top.
Kombat, they started adding, like, the X-ray attacks, and, like, you see, like, you watch yourself break all of this person's bones, and they just keep fighting, and then you do it again 5 seconds later. It's like, it's not a fucking thing.
How do you... What?
Yeah. It's like being a even remotely sentient fucking human who knows how bodies work. I'm like, that's just silly.
Yeah.
That's just ridiculous.
It's so funny. It's just like... you know what? It's like, it's very funny that violence is in video games. They're all the way from, like, you know, your classic fucking 16-bit indie title to, like, your RTS now. Like, violence is everywhere. But there's also just as many, like, opportunities, I think, in a lot of games to not be violent. Like, if you've got, like, Civilization, for instance, you can go that whole game building your culture. Like, that's your whole thing. It's like, I just want my country to be really cultured. And, like, that's how you win the game. It's like, it's just so ridiculous that we have all these, like, other things that aren't violent video games.
Yeah.
And that, like, people don't point to those of, like, just, okay, they're a violent person and they play violent games, but they also play non-violent games, so they also watch violent movies and then non-violent movies. So what is...
Should the non-violent movies make them non-violent?
Yeah, are they toning them down? Are they bringing them back grounded? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, is the reverse true?
I feel like video games, I feel like a lot of the time parents don't feel like they need to be teaching their kids how to play video games, but they're worried about video games teaching their kids to do things. But it's just like anything else in life. It's like there is a way to approach a situation poorly and badly. And if you're trying to teach your kids some good ground rules, some morals, you might approach that game a little differently and might go, no, I don't want to kill people. I'm going to do it the good way.
Yeah, like
Right? Like, it's just a general overall...
like, it's
don't be a douche.
anecdotal, but, like, I grew up with, like, Spider-Man is, like, a big, like, deal for me.
Mm-hmm.
I've never played the bad guy in a game. Like, never. I just don't. Like,
I know...
Infamous, I'm the good guy.
Yeah.
Playing game, I'm the paladin.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
And again, to reiterate what we were kind of saying earlier, is that, like, I know people who like playing the villain side of the games, and even and a lot of time will even go back through a game to play the villain version of it. And again, it's like not being killing people is not the thing that makes it fun. It just makes, like, the gameplay, a lot of the time it's usually, like, easier, it's loosey goosey, you kind of just, like, do whatever you want.
Yeah, you're like...
It's not as
It's fun
stressful.
to see the narrative differences. Like,
Yeah.
I enjoy seeing, like, what is it that pushes that character to that place? Like, how do people respond to him?
I know
or her?
friends who, like, growing up and watching TV shows and stuff like that, they always, like, related and like enjoyed the villain characters more than like the hero characters. Like they didn't really like the goody two-shoe Boy Scout style Tushy Boy Scout style heroes in some of these shows and movies. So they're like, I'll play the bad guy just for the sake of like the cheesy villain laugh, right? Like just being the weird aesthetic of a villain and being rebellious or whatever, not because of killing people and being violent.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Like in Infamous, you get like red lightning instead of blue lightning, and you're like, cool, I want red lightning. I gotta kill people. Fine, it's a video game, whatever. I'll just
whatever.
shoot
The
some
little
guys.
polygon people.
If I have to kill people to get red lightning, I will. That's true for real.
Do it.
That's
Fire powers.
That's IRL.
I'm gonna
though.
kill people.
I still haven't played Infamous 2 to get the fire powers. I need to do that.
Yeah.
Just to do
If
it.
you like fire, a lot of time fire is associated with the
It's
bad guys.
usually a bad guy thing.
Just-
Just makes me upset.
Or
'cause
the-
Human Torch
or the
is a
edgy
good guy,
dude.
but-
Yeah, full. You know
like
what?
pyro.
But you know what's funny about like video games in general, just like the whole like good and bad. It's like you're either like paladin, like good boy, or the worst of the worst. Like there's never a middle ground where you get to choose. Like I'm alright.
I find a lot of the narratives in those style of games, like all the dialogue that's already been pre-written, stuff like that, is either for you being very, very good or very, very bad. So you can go the whole game being this superly morally good person and do the one like kind of bad thing. The person's like, "Oh my god, you're so evil. What is wrong with you?"
Yeah, you're just suddenly an asshole.
You're the devil incarnate.
I'm trying to be
How
somewhere
dare you
in the
eat
middle.
children?
I'm trying to be like a realistic person who makes mistakes
I found this 20 on the ground and I didn't give it back to
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one thing.
Thanks,
This is a weird game, and like I won't talk about it beyond like this one point. But Spider-Man: Web of Shadows had this like morality system where you could be good Spider-Man or like evil black suit Spider-Man,
sick.
and it had like the two different endings.
Black.
But like it had one ending for if you chose like basically like all good things.
Yeah.
One ending if you chose basically all bad things. But there was like one specific decision that if you played the whole game and were like majority good but chose that to be bad, or played the game majority
Vice
bad
versa,
and chose
yeah.
that to be good, there was also an alternate third and fourth ending. And I just thought that was interesting. I thought that was a cool thing to do in a game with
That is
multiple
very
choice.
cool.
Like that game's fucking weird, and like I don't know why it is, but I thought that was, if you're gonna have a game with those options, it was cool to see like the idea of some shades of gray getting introduced
Nice.
in a game with multiple endings.
Yeah.
Because normally it's like, it just kind of totals up at the end, like you did more of the good things and less of the bad things. You're a good guy. You saved the world.
Yeah, right.
Right? But I think that's kind of us talking about violence in video games.
Yeah,
It's one of those things that we could say a lot or we could say a little.
it's a
but-
huge topic.
Yeah.
That was something I was going to say, but I think I'll leave it.
No. What is it?
Is it short?
Kind of. I was going to mention how, like, in games like Mass Effect, where there's a lot of dialogue options, I find that there's, again, like, it's kind of like a character trait to pick, like, the bad option or the good option. Because, like, there are pros and cons of being, like, a very nice and kind person all the time, and pros and cons of being, like, a stern, more aggressive style person all the time. And I just think that's also something to partake in when making the good and bad choice in video games, where it's like, when you make the good choice all the time, sometimes you get pushed around and you get taken advantage of, but when you're the bad guy, you kind of can take more charge, but sometimes you get more aggressive and people don't like you, and it's kind of like,
There's also sometimes...
again, it's that like balance and middle ground, or like sometimes even in Mass Effect, I'm like, always the good option. I'm a good boy.
Yeah. What's
Just
funny
for the sake of
about
it.
what's funny about Mass Effect specifically is you're still the hero in the end of the day.
It's
Even
just
if
your
you're-
personality.
Yeah, even if you're an asshole, you're still like mostly doing the good thing. You're just going about it like an obtuse, reckless way.
Yeah, the most like evil things that happen in that game, if you pick the evil side, is like you leave a character to die, but it's usually because of a situation and like a military strategic situation where you're like, where it's like, should we go
have
back
to
and save
retreat for
them,
the rest of
or
our
should we
sakes?
like save
Yeah.
ourselves? And then if you pick the bad option, you're like, hey, fuck them, and like you just go save yourself. And again, like that's not like that could actually happen in a real military scenario.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's an interesting thing, is that sort of introducing those shades of gray.
Exactly, but like,
Evil.
and another thing about Mass Effect 2's Renegade system, it's like a lot of the times, like your Renegade option is just shoot first.
Yeah, as
Like,
opposed to
it's as opposed to like
get shot.
not shoot. Like you're gonna shoot them eventually. It's like, do you just want to?
You just delay it.
Yeah. Do you want to just start with the gun? Just like, bang bang, boom boom. It's like, I don't fight fair because I'm a renegade. Exactly. It's like you're a loose cannon.
Yeah.
It's really what it is. You're loose cannon shepherd.
Yeah.
It's loose cannon cub.
But then
Gotta put it
next
back on the
week we're
leash.
gonna talk about how you can sleep with everyone on the ship.
Yeah.
Yeah, next week is romance in video games.
Perfect.
We're
The
getting
other side of the coin of violence.
Persona 5.
But yeah, that's us for today, there, guys. Quickly, we'll talk about sort of our stuff on the social media side and everything. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and obviously YouTube, and importantly, Patreon. We've got some stuff that we're working on. If you like what you see and you want to get more involved in the discussion, please do check out our Patreon. It gives you a chance to support us, which we greatly appreciate. And even if that's not something you're okay with, please at least a like and a subscribe, and if we're moderately entertaining, a share. We're still trying to get the word out there, so every little bit is greatly appreciated.
We're a new baby channel, and anytime you guys comment or subscribe or like, it really goes forward to us getting more content and keeping up with the stuff.
We want to do more videos. We want to do some more gameplay, some shorter, funnier videos, and we want to do a lot. We got a lot on our plate that we want to do.
Lots. We got some more stuff coming. More probably analytical videos from both all of us. More focused in on a topic of like one opinion. Maybe later down the line. Like that. Yeah, exactly. Retrospectives.
But as we have more of that, we'll be sure to let you guys know and have it out there. But thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Yeah. See you later, green thumbs.